start the press conference, I'll say a couple of words and then I'll invite Stein to join me on the podium and maybe say a few words, then we'll open it up for Q&A for the press conference. I guess as we were thinking about this press conference, and very little I can say to complement what Paulo Cesar said earlier on, but a couple of points I would make. Numbers are important. Numbers are important as you run the business, but today we think about our history. And when I think about the numbers that define our history, I think about 1934, which was of course the founding of Widerøe, and 1969, the founding of Embraer. And in an aggregate situation, collectively, we have over 130 years of successful operations in commercial aerospace between us. Now, Stein, it took you almost 50 years to start operating an Embraer aircraft. Of course, that was the Brasilia in the mid-1980s through Norsk. And I've had to wait 30 more years since then for us to, my team and I, to deliver to Widerøe the first E2. So we have a legacy, a positive legacy with Widerøe. We celebrate uniquely now when we bring a new customer into the fold. And before we get into the Q&A, I would just take the opportunity, if you don't mind, to remind you why I believe Widerøe may have chosen the aircraft. Their decisions, of course, would be driven by their own positioning, but when we think about the segments that we operate in, everything up to the large narrow-bodies, let's say everything up to the A321 and the MAX 10, and everything down to the smallest commercial jet aircraft in the world today, the aircraft that's parked outside that Widerøe will take delivery of, that is the most fuel-efficient aircraft in that segment in the world today of any aircraft being produced by any OEM in the world. And a derivative of its fuel efficiency, of course, is it has the lowest level of NOx and CO2 emissions of any aircraft in commercial production by any OEM in the world today. It's also the quietest aircraft outside of any of the narrow-body aircraft. So from an environment perspective, we also think about noise, not just CO2 and NOx emissions, but also on the interior of the cabin, and something I know Stein and his colleagues are particularly excited about. It is also the quietest interior in a cabin of any narrow-body that's in production today. So those are the reasons I felt perhaps Stein, along with the operating economics and financial capability of the aircraft as we go forward. So in summary, Stein, again, on behalf of everybody at Embraer, it really is our privilege and our honor to have Widerøe to take the launch aircraft. You will always and forever be written into the history books now of Embraer, having taken the very first 192. We thank you for your confidence in Embraer, for your commitment to Embraer. And whilst I see the chairman is in the back of the room, and Roger, I have advised my general counsel that your comments earlier were not a commitment to firm up the options before the evening is out, although I may want to talk to you about that again. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open for questions in a little bit, but allow me to invite Stein Neilsen, the Chief Executive of Widerøe, to say a few words. Stein, please.
Thank you, John. And of course, it's a big day also for Widerøe. It's by far the largest project we ever executed. So I'm really happy that the whole organization of Widerøe has chipped in on this enormous workload that we have done the last months. And of course, as I said on the ceremony, we have worked very, very well with Embraer. I'm so satisfied with the cooperation and all the Embraer people. Of course, there are issues and challenges in such a process going into service with the first aircraft. But the willingness to support us and to find good solutions, we appreciate it very much. Several reasons that we chose to work with Embraer. John has mentioned some of it, good economics, noise, and that kind of thing. But for us as a regional carrier, right sizing is essential. So of course, the family of E-jets that we are seeing coming up here for the coming years is critical for us in Widerøe. If you're going to get good economics as a regional carrier, you need to have right-sized. So, but there is many reasons. So, if you want to elaborate on that, we'll be open to that. So, thank you, and you're open for a question.
Good morning. Congratulations, Enrique Perella from Airways Magazine. My question to you is more on the operational front. You've been a turboprop operator for a very long time, and this is your first jet, and you are only taking delivery of one this month, I believe, and the upcoming ones are in the next 2 months, correct? So how will you put this airplane into operation? How are you going to back up in case there's a malfunction or any new routes that you'll be operating? I mean, you need to have a backup. So how is that going to work in your network? Thank you.
And of course, as a launch customer, we are prepared for handle some issues. But I'm really confident in the product and what we have seen so far. So, but of course, we are up till mid-August. We have low utilization in the schedule and such things. And of course, we have some Q4 in backup. For if there will be any issues, but I'm very confident in the plans we have made together with Embraer, and of course we have a lot of Embraer people in Norway to assist us on the entry into service.
I might just compliment that on behalf of my engineering colleagues as well. One of the focuses of Embraer, of course, everybody now knows that we're ahead of schedule, and with the benefit of being ahead of schedule, we took that extra buffer and used that throughout the program to ensure an aircraft enters into service in the most robust and mature way possible. We expect a far more robust and matured aircraft than frankly we, and I expect probably any other OEM in the world has ever entered into service from day one with the very first aircraft. So we're very focused on that. And we have 20 million hours of experience on the E1 when we launched the E2. We have over 23 million hours today, but even when we launched it, we took all of that tacit knowledge, that experience, so as to ensure even our launch operators would have a very robust and mature program from the very first revenue generating flight that will happen in April.
Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Alberto from Reuters. The president Paul just said that Embraer might have a capacity that he thinks commercial aviation will increase its deliveries on the next few months or few years. Could you be more specific on that? What's the plans for commercial aviation for the next maybe few years? And he said that maybe the commercial aviation part of Embraer is 60% of the whole company. It's any possibility to increase that on the few years because of that E2? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're not giving guidance beyond 2018 from an investor relations perspective. So the guidance we've given is just for 2018. In 2018, the guidance for deliveries for commercial aviation was 85 to 95 deliveries. I'm very comfortable with that guidance. That's a slight dip, that's only a slight dip over the course of the last number of years, the level of deliveries, which is pretty standard the year you enter into service a new aircraft type. My expectation now that, and I have our Chief Commercial Officer, Arjen Mayer, in the room, and we had a conversation just this morning about this, the level of commercial activity that you experience immediately after certification and after entry into service of the first aircraft, it's like a hockey stick. That level of engagement. We have plenty of journalists here in the room. Some of you were here and may have seen an airline CEO or two here yesterday, and we have other airline CEOs that will be visiting the plant later this week. That's a high level of activity when we have airline CEOs and their delegations visiting. So they're not just kicking the tires anymore. We're now having meaningful conversations, commercial conversations with airlines right around the world. In many cases, marquee and network type operators. So whilst I can't give you guidance on our delivery profile from 2019 and onwards, only because from an investor relations perspective we don't do that, what I will share with you is I share Paulo Cesar's optimism that commercial activity is going up, and therefore a direct correlation of that, or a manifestation of that, would be one would expect your deliveries to profile up. That's certainly, as you make a multi-billion-dollar investment in a program like this, now our shareholders are expecting a good return on their investment, and the best way to do that is to sell as many aircraft as possible, and that's the focus of my team and I.
Yes, Jeff Lewis from the Wall Street Journal. In the U.S., there's a lot of pilot contract talks coming up, and there's a lot of talk about relaxing scope clauses. Are you guys seeing any increased interest in the E2 line because of this, or is this influencing at all? If I could sneak in one other one. Is there any interest from Saab to join up with you guys, with Embraer and Boeing, or from Boeing and Embraer to bring Saab into all of these talks?
So on the first question, which is quite a complicated question because there's really two parts even to the first question. So part of that may be the 76-seater scope conversation that American, Delta and United particularly would have with their between the pilot unions and the management teams. And the second part of that question, whether you meant it or not, was the 190-95 potentially operating in the mainline. So let me answer both questions because they're both interesting. United Airlines has publicly, Scott Kirby, the president of United, has been public in his comments recently about wanting to have a meaningful dialogue with the pilots around scope as it pertains to the 76-seater. How that will manifest, whether it means a change in the number of units or a change in the MTOW, the max takeoff weight of the aircraft, or a combination of both, we'll just have to wait and see. That will be a derivative of that conversation between the pilot unions and the respective management teams. And then in quick succession, as the natural cadence plays out, American Airlines and Delta Airlines will follow that first conversation as their terms that they've agreed with their pilot unions start to mature. So United has started a conversation with their unions. Don't know how that's going to play out, but here's what I do know. Since January the 1st, 2013, which was the last wave of replacement in North America, Embraer has been fortunate enough to win over 80%, in fact over 85% of the seats that have been sold in the 76-seat market. And in terms of the actual quantum, that's circa 400 units since January 2013. As we look over the course of the next 5 to 6 years, we anticipate about 600 aircraft will be retired and or replaced in the North American market in that segment. So that would be a combination of 50-seaters and, let's say, the older CRJs that just need to be retired because of technical obsolescence, and frankly just because the airline customers will be demanding a more comfortable aircraft to fly in. Embraer hopes to win a significant percentage of that as we go forward. In relation to the other part of that, which is which I'm particularly excited about, is the opportunity for Embraer to advance the 190 and perhaps even the 195 platform into the mainline operators in the US. So I think you're going to see an enormous amount of activity, not only in the United States, but with the larger network carriers right around the world, to adopt in their mainline fleets the 190 and probably even more so the 195. So the US market accounts for a significant, it's our largest market in the world. It's about a third of our deliveries. Western continental Europe, if you aggregate the two, they're about 50% of our global deliveries. So we're very interested not only as we look forward in the lower end, let's say the 175 E2 in North America, but I also believe that we're going to have an opportunity at the upper end, particularly with the 195. In relation to Saab, we've no comment to make. Saab is not on the E2, so I think the answer to that is evident.
No, I'm sorry, I meant the agreement with Embraer and Boeing.
Sorry, so the question again on Saab then?
If there's any interest from Saab to join with Embraer and Boeing in these talks, or any interest from Boeing and Embraer to bring
Yeah,
Saab in?
I think we made an observation. We're not going to talk today about the Boeing situation, and we had a separate session this morning, so I'm not going to make any comments on that. I hope you'll all respect that today. Thank you.
John, a lot of the John Ostrower, a lot of the discussion around the driving force for an Embraer-Boeing alliance has been around market access to China and increasing the political influence of the U.S. as far as making sure the E-jets have a receptive audience as far as the diplomatic relations and the pairing with industrial bases of either country. Are you concerned at all that what's going on between U.S. and China right now as far as an escalating trade war over airplane parts, aerospace products, particularly with tariffs being proposed on aircraft just right up until the edge of the MAX 8, and also the C919 on the other side of the fence, could eventually, potentially, affect Embraer, and does that undermine or hurt the value of any potential alliance with your neighbor to the north?
John, Embraer is a believer in open markets and free trade, and bilateral issues between sovereign states is not something that we're predisposed to comment on, frankly. So I'm not going to directly comment on the issues between the US and China as it pertains to the tariffs that are being discussed. But I would say that Embraer, we're very much an open market society in terms of trading, and we favor open markets. When I think about China, John, it of course will be, it already is for Embraer, an enormous market. We have over 100 E-jets flying in China today. We have over 80% market share in China for all jet aircraft below 150 seats in China. We continue to, as you come around the plant here, you'll see a number of Chinese liveries on aircraft that we're getting to deliver in the next few weeks. So China is a major market for Embraer. We have a lot of partnerships there with our airline customers, and I'm confident that Embraer will continue to work closely with the CAAC, the NDRC, and the Chinese airlines to continue that momentum of deliveries that we've experienced now for 15 or 20 years in China.
Hi, Dominic Perry from Flight Global. Two questions from me. One is, how long do you think the E1s will be produced for? And secondly, Mr. Neilsen told us yesterday that it was your view, your judgment, that they would be the ideal launch operator that convinced them to come on board. I just wondered what your reasons were for that.
Reasons for what?
Well, for the confidence that they would be an ideal launch operator for the E190-E2.
Yeah, I'll give you my perspective on that, and then maybe Stein can comment on it as well. But you know, when we think about Widerøe, Widerøe is not just an airline. Widerøe is somewhere between an airframe OEM, an MRO, and an airline. This is an airline that operates inside the Arctic Circle. I could not have aspired to have an airline with the sort of capabilities that Widerøe has to be the launch operator. They have a philosophy, a mindset, a DNA of just making it happen, getting it done. And as you think about, for an airframe OEM, when you're selecting your launch customer, you deeply need a partner, one that will work with you to make sure any of those earlier issues get ironed out. Of course, as I said, Dominic, earlier, we don't anticipate really any significant issues with the launch of this aircraft because we focused on robustness and maturity at the entry into service. But all that being said, to have an airline with the, I would say, rather unique capabilities, and I'll let Stein comment on those, that Widerøe brings, it just made them a perfect marriage, a perfect customer. And taking the first 3 aircraft in succession was great from a production and a learning curve perspective from our side as well. But I don't know, Stein, if you want to make any comments on that.
Yeah, but I feel that yeah, our capabilities on the MRO side is a critical issue. So we have a lot of skilled technicians and a lot of experience with handling tough and complex situations. So I think that was one of the thing that I felt that John and Arjan was focusing on when we were selected. And of course, we are very happy. It's an appreciation of all what we in Widerøe stand for.
Dominic, I thought the question you were going to ask, and I thought where the Wall Street Journal was going earlier on, was, well, was Stein going to be the launch operator for the 175 E2? Maybe that's a question you want to ask.
Maybe, but John, as I said before today, we have now really focus on a good entry into service, and of course we need more aircraft, so we have to come back to that one. But it has really been a pleasure to work with the Embraer people in this process. So it's always a risk when you're taking as a launch customer, but this has been a privilege for us in Widerøe.
And on the E1 production?
Oh, sorry, Dominic, on the E1 production. So I believe that the press has had the opportunity to get a plant tour, and when you get to our assembly hangars, you'll see that we've now created what we call a hybrid line for manufacturing and assembly. So a hybrid line is somewhat unique to a bridge line. A bridge line is typically what you will do as an OEM when you're sunsetting one aircraft family and then you're launching the production of a new aircraft family. And a bridge line may last for a year, 2 years, 3 years, typically max. No pun intended with the max, 3 years. However, in the case of Embraer, because we don't have absolute visibility on where scope will be, we need to have an aircraft that is available to deliver to the US market. I shared with you over the course of the next 5 years, they're going to replace 600 aircraft in the US market. They won't be replaced one for one, but maybe of that 600, you may need 500 aircraft to replace those 600 that are being retired. In the event scope is not released, I'm talking about scope at the lower end at the 76 seat, and principally around the MTOW, we need to have an aircraft to present to those airlines, and that is the 175 E1. And therefore, the answer to the question is, we don't have a sunset date for the E1 program. We have the capability from a manufacturing perspective to continue to produce the 175 E1 for as long as it's required. All that being said, Dominic, all that being said, in the 175 E2, with the Pratt & Whitney GTF engine on that aircraft, we have a uniquely environmentally friendly aircraft, and from a economic perspective, a rather unique offering for the airlines. So I am hopeful, as a citizen of the planet, I'm hopeful that scope will get changed as soon as possible, and that airlines will embrace around the world the most environmentally friendly 76-seater, which will be the 175 E2. But that aircraft, for the press, that aircraft will enter into service later in 2021 on schedule, as we have outlined. So we're not delaying that. It's not an aircraft uniquely built for the US market. I expect you will see application of that 175 E2 in India, in China, and in other jurisdictions. So we're powering on schedule with the 175 E2 entering into service late 2021.
In Norway.
Yeah, and of course for us in Widerøe it's very important. Right sizing is a critical issue for us as a regional carrier. So I think we, in good time, will come back to that discussion with them. But of course, that was one of the main issues to work closely with Embraer on the 190, is the possibility for the E2 175.
And a common cockpit, right? So AAA certified customers will go between one cockpit and another comfortably.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Carl from Aftenposten in Norway. First for Stein, Embraer talks, and you also talk a lot about low costs, low fuel, and the low maintenance costs. Will that be reflected in ticket pricing for your passengers?
Yes, of course, and that is one of the main goals with our stepping up to 140 seats. We have to lower seat cost, and we have to go back to the market with a price offering that's more efficient than we can do with the smallest aircraft on 50 and 78 seaters. So that's really one of the drives in Widerøe to take this step up in the regional jet is to go back to the market with a better offering.
And for John, you're saying, if I remember correctly, the cost per seat will be about the same as on a 737, for instance. But the total cost for a flight, of course, then will be much lower. What opportunities do you think that creates for Widerøe?
Yeah, so on a cost per seat basis, let's say against the A320neo, for example, we are almost the same. I think we're maybe three points below disadvantaged against that for an aircraft that's fundamentally a different size. However, 20% plus differential favoring the E2 on a per trip basis. And what that does is, Stein mentioned a couple of times now the concept of right sizing. So as airlines want to deploy the optimized asset to fit the flows that they have and not have to discount tickets to fill an aircraft, which is a false economy of scale, airlines increasingly are adopting a second fleet to optimize the flows with the right size of aircraft so that they get to that 85-90% load factor, but they get to that load factor at the right yield. That's the key. It's not about load factor at any price, because you won't make any money just fitting aircraft if you're not getting enough revenue for the tickets. So it's about right sizing, and that's great for the environment as well. When you right size for the environment, you're not flying around an aircraft that's way bigger than what you needed, burning more fuel, more emissions into the environment, more noise for the people that live near the airports. So right size, the concept of right sizing increasingly is going to be adopted around the world. And that concept of airlines adopting a second fleet, I think you're going to see, frankly, an explosion of interest in airlines now, even marquee airlines that have been sole source for decades in many cases, now adopting a second fleet type. Widerøe is a case in point. Widerøe is a case in point. They've been operating with my competitor's aircraft, a turboprop, for many decades, and now they're introducing a second fleet. But I also believe many of the airlines around the world that are operating 737s or A320s, the concept of right sizing as airlines chase return on invested capital, as shareholders say, it's not about chasing market share, it's about delivering for the shareholders, then you need to right size. You can't abuse the assets to an extent where you're just filling those last 2 or 3 or 4 buckets and getting pennies for the seats. That's not good for the airline investors, and it's not good for the environment. So we're at a point of inflection on the planet now where people are going to embrace the E2, not only because of the economic benefits, but matched equally almost by the environmental benefits. Right sizing absolutely will be the way forward, and it'll be embraced wholeheartedly, I believe, by airlines going forward.
If you have one last question.
I'm sorry, I know you already said that you won't comment about China, but United States is your biggest market, and China is important too. United States can impose some rules about selling aircraft for any country. Don't you think this commercial dispute in the end might compromise business for Embraer, or not just Embraer, but other players in the industry too? Thank you.
Yeah, I think I will just repeat what I said earlier on. Embraer, we can only speak for Embraer. I won't speak for the country of Brazil. But Embraer is very much a fan of open and free markets and free trade. We respect inter-sovereign conversations that may occur from time to time. There are no concerns from a Brazilian trading perspective as we foresee today. So the market is very much open to Brazil in trading, and certainly our relationship as a BRIC country, we are the B in BRIC. As a BRIC country, we have a uniquely good relationship with China. China has been a multi-decade partner of Embraer. They play a significant role in our annual production of skyline of deliveries. So, I'm happy to talk about China all day long. I visit China at least 4 times a year, every year, and it's a significant market. I don't foresee any issues between the relationship between Brazil and China that would impact our ability to deliver aircraft. So, but beyond that, I'm not going to comment on the tariff conversations, because we want to respect the sovereign issue between those nations.
One last question.
John, just to complement the question of my colleague.
The question I tried to...
You tried to get out of, yeah. I think this issue with the parts that come from the US and that impact sales to countries with which the US doesn't have relationships, like for example Iran and things like this. Do you think this trade war, because today we have Boeing stocks tanking because of this tariff that China announced. Are you concerned, are you worried that somehow this trade war will impact Embraer indirectly? You use parts produced in the US and you sell to other countries and import iron, steel from China.
Well, we have significant partners. A significant percentage of the aircraft comes from Pratt & Whitney, the engines. Honeywell in the cockpit, Liebherr in Europe. So we have partnerships right around the world, not only in Europe and North America, but actually in Southeast Asia as well. The same for all the airframe OEMs. Again, my own personal perspective, and my colleagues get a little nervous when I start with that. When I start with that comment, my own personal perspective. Trade wars. If you look at the empirical evidence over the last 50 or 75 years, trade wars tend to be a zero-sum game. They don't tend to in a meaningful way deliver the benefits that perhaps that any party may have envisioned in the first instance. I'm not sure trade wars are actually going to materialize. We don't know. We have to wait and see and respect what the various administrations ultimately decide to do. I would just say, from a Brazilian perspective, from Embraer's perspective, which is the only perspective that I can truly comment on, is we have good trade relationships with almost every country around the world. When we talk about Iran, to identify or recognize that portion of the comment, we absolutely will respect the OFAC regulations and guidance on our dealings in Iran, or our abilities to sell our aircraft in Iran. But as a general matter, Brazil has excellent trade relationships with almost every country around the world. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to sell our aircraft. Today we have 70 operators in 50 countries just for the E-jets. We have 100 jet customers around the world in over 60 countries, and when I include the 145, we're a global company today. We're truly a global company, and therefore it's in our self-interest to not want to see trade wars with anybody. Our suppliers, I'm sure, I'll let them speak for themselves, but and they're all here, so you can ask them directly what their views are on trade wars. But we want to stay out of that. It's our DNA in Embraer to stay away from that. good trade relationships with everyone. We are fans publicly and proponents of open and free markets. And the market that I'm focused on today is Norway. That's the market I'm focused on today, and ensuring that Stein gets to take his aircraft. I'm looking forward to joining Stein in Aberdeen, right, Stein? On Thursday of next week, as the aircraft enters into Norwegian airspace for the very first time. That's the market that I'm focused on today, and maybe if with that, perhaps Nicholas, I'll ask Stein to invite him to say the final few comments.
And of course, the main focus now for us as an airline operator is to getting that bird out of Brazil. So we're really looking forward to enter the Norwegian airspace and give the market a new experience. I think it is important, and I'm fully agree with John's thoughts about the environment and right sizing. It's a key issue, and of course we have to make money as an airliner, so it's all about right sizing.
Right. That's the headline. It's all about right sizing. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
John, Nielsen, before you go, I believe some members of the press would like to take a picture of both of you.
Okay.
So